Right. So here we are on Remembrance Day 2020, and I just started recording this. As everybody knows, there's about 500 people in the ROI group now, just over 500. But we usually get about 25 to 35 people live. Sometimes we get a little bit more. And then people watch these recorded sessions, you know, in the evenings. I mean, some people have real jobs, unlike me, and you know, they can't show up at noon Eastern time or 9 a.m. You know, Pacific time. Members come from all over Canada, from the United States. We have a few from Mexico, and if you see me looking away from time to time, you know, I'm on my own today. You have to listen to me for a little over an hour. So I'm admitting people as I'm talking. So if I'm looking away and not quite as fluid as I'd like to be, that's why. You know, I started the ROI group earlier this year, and you know, it's a free group, and we do have a couple of sponsors. One of them, I think, just joined us. And you know, these are the people who make it possible for folks like me to do a little bit of research and then spread the word through things like this. So it is a free service. It is sponsor supported, and I really appreciate, obviously, all the help. I do think that the people I coach and the people I've been teaching and mentoring, you know, I think maybe I shouldn't say this because I am a coach, but I learn almost as much from the people I coach as I think they do from me. And they're always asking tough questions, and tough questions lead to new answers in many cases. And you have to be careful to claim originality about anything. You know, there's a lot of smart people on this planet. There's like 7 billion people on this planet, and there's lots of smart people. But I do think that this group and the others who can't join us live but watch us watch these things, you know, this tonight or on the weekend, I do think we're doing some of the best work in real estate in the world. I really do think so. And what I wanted to do today was I wanted to show you a project that I'm doing with my my girlfriend, who's also my wife, Dawn. She's been my wife for 36 years, and you know, I don't mind saying on the Remembrance Day, I remember all the good times that we've shared, including 5 kids. So she is the project manager. My only role is to try and pay the bills, and her role is to actually run the project. And she's really good at that sort of thing, and that really helps somebody like me, because what I really wanted to spend time doing as I, you know, get into the last years of my career, is I wanted to spend as little time as possible, you know, in terms of administration, management, project management, that sort of thing, and as much as possible on research and coaching and mentoring and teaching. You know, I am a real estate broker. I think everybody knows that. And I work with some fantastic young realtors, and they literally do almost all of that sort of work. And I have a broker of record. His name is Ralph Shaw, a charming Irishman, and he runs the brokerages very, very, very well. And one of the discussions I had with Ralph when I joined him 12 years ago was that if I had to do any administration and any management, I would be leaving the partnership and the brokerage, you know, in a few months. I don't want to do that. I want to spend as much time as I can, you know, trying to change the world in my own way. And again, that might be an overstatement, but I actually do think that we're together making some significant changes. So I'm going to share my screen with you now. And I'm going to talk about a model that I've been working on, and some of the people who are on the call, like Dan Doré from Doré Property Management, have helped me and Dawn with this model. So we're not alone in doing this. We have a group of people, including Paul Murphy and Eric Brisson, Brad Cartier, Brad Thiessen, Andrew Ross, Kristen Spilfogel, and others who are who are helping. And the model is called Main Street Makeovers. And this is a model I wanted to tell people because a lot of the big cities, whether it's Toronto or Vancouver, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Boston, Austin, all of these wonderful cities, they've been so picked over by investors that it's very difficult for people like the ROI group, myself included, to make much headway if you're buying properties that have cap rates of 3.5% or 4.5%. I have clients in Long Beach, California. Before they started coaching with me, they were buying properties with 0.9%, and I think one had 1.1% cap rates. And I said to the boys, they're young fellas, I said, you guys, you know, you could put your money in the bank and probably get 1 or 2%. Really, is that the right thing to be doing? And so we have come up with some new models for them in Long Beach, California, that are producing cap rates that are better than that. The last project that they did in Long Beach was they bought 2 side-by-side single-family dwellings, and they got permission from the local council to add side yard apartments for both of them. And because there's a back alley, they were able to add, and they're close to the port, they were able to add 2 independent workshops in the quote backyard, but the backyard faced the alley. And so they got permission to really animate it, and they're thrilled. Their cap rate is around 5.5%. Still, 5.5% is not quite at the level that I've established for myself and my clients. I am trying, and I'm asking all of the people that I work with to get going in a 6% cap rate, if not more, but not less than 6%. And I think that's really important, because I don't have to tell you how hard it is to make these projects successful, how much work goes into it. You know, a lot of people who are coming into the real estate industry think, oh my gosh, you know, it's an easy business, it's passive income. And I often get asked, can you teach me how to make money quick? And I don't want to do any work. Well, when people ask me that, I say, I'm so glad you asked me that, because I can't coach you, because I don't know how to do that. And there is nothing that is either stress-free or work-free, at least in my experience, and I've been around now for 68 years. So this is called Main Street Makeovers. It is a model that would apply across Canada and the United States, and it is being implemented by many of the clients that I coach in Canada and the United States. But this is one that we're doing, my wife and I. Because it's Remembrance Day, I can't let it go without remembering, of course, all the men and women who sacrificed so much to create this incredible country that we live in. My dad, who came here originally from Vienna in Austria in the 1930s, couldn't believe he could live in a country where people were trying to kill him every day. And he just loved every aspect of Canada. He wanted to be Canadian. And with all due respect to all the different cultures in Canada, he didn't want to be labeled a hyphen Canadian. He just wanted to be a Canadian. He didn't want to be an English Canadian or French Canadian or an Indo-Canadian or whatever. He just wanted to be Canadian. That was his view. And he certainly loved this country, as do I. Guess which one is, Dale, I'll ask you to unmute yourself and guess which one is my dad. See, we'll put Dale.
I'm guessing Mr. Firestone.
Yes, but which one is it? Is it the image on the right or the left?
On the right.
Yeah, there you go. So this is a picture actually of my dad, since it is Remembrance Day, OJ Firestone, the late Professor OJ Firestone. And on the left of the screen here, you could see the American-born Minister of Everything, CD Howe. And Mr. Howe and my dad worked in post-war reconstruction in the late 1940s, well, right through the war, preparing for hopefully a successful conclusion to the Second World War. And then through the 40s and 50s and early 1960s, they worked together. And one of the things that they did together was they created what was called at that time Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation, which is now called Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And my dad really pushed, you know, for not just having, you know, available financing so that homes could be provided at a reasonable cost to returning veterans from overseas, both from the Pacific Theater and the European Theater. He wanted them to have homes. He didn't want them to necessarily be condemned to a life of renting. And I think everybody on this call and everybody who follows me knows that I think, to the extent that we can do it, that home ownership is the right goal for every society, whether you're living in Africa, you're living in Europe, you're living in Asia, or you're living in North America, or South America, or Central America. If you can own your own home, that is the most fundamental thing that I think human beings can do. For me, as I've taught entrepreneurship now for a few decades, the #1 source for entrepreneurial startups is not bank financing. No surprise, I think, to most people on this call. It is home equity. And that's just as true in a small compound in Africa, in Ghana, for example, as it would be in Ottawa, Canada, or anywhere else. Owning your own home, even if it's a modest home, having a legal address is really important. And that's what my dad believed, that's what the minister believed, and that's why they created Central Mortgage and Housing, CMHC, Canada Mortgage and Housing. You see on the screen here too, something called the Strawberry Box Home. I know that CD Howe and my dad recruited a number of architects in Canada and the United States to create a plan where they could build tens of thousands, in fact, hundreds of thousands of these. And you'll see on the next slide, what these houses look like. Now, I'm going to go back and you can see how small it looks. But if you actually go inside, it had 3 bedrooms, 2 upstairs, and the 1 on the main level. And I assume that the 2 upstairs would be for your children. And, as a little boy, I had 2 sisters and a brother, and we all slept in the same room, little tiny beds, one next to the other, until, my older sisters became a little bit older, and then they got their own bedroom. But we were 4 little kids in one room, one cot after another, and we had 1 bathroom in the house too. And my father came to Canada, as I said, in the 1930s, and he had I think about $20 in his pocket at the time. So he had to start with almost nothing. So I assume the parents would live on the ground floor. You had a kitchen, a living room, dining room, and 1 bathroom. And they built tens of thousands, in fact, hundreds of thousands, and in the United States, millions of these homes. And they've been quite successful. One of my coaching clients and coaching candidates, Major Gus, I call him Major Gus, sent me these pictures this morning as he was thinking about Remembrance Day and the wartime housing. And these are, he is now serving, in the Canadian Armed Forces at a base near Montreal. And these are wartime housing that you could still see near the base in Montreal that are now in civilian ownership. They used to be owned by the military. I can tell you if CD Howe and my dad were to somehow come back, from I guess from heaven, I hope, they would be really, really, really upset today to find that Canadians and Americans, and not just Canadians and Americans, I've taught in Sweden, in Stockholm, and the housing shortage in places like desirable cities like Stockholm, Copenhagen, Berlin, and all the cities I mentioned in North America, it is atrocious. The fact that we have, the Americans have 55,000 homeless people living in Los Angeles today, it is a scandal, in my opinion, and certainly CD Howe and OJ Firestone, if they were around today, would be, excuse my language, but they'd be kicking ass. I'm extremely disappointed that the richest society that the planet has ever seen can't provide enough housing for its people. And I just can't imagine any of us, certainly not me, surviving very long on the street in a Canadian winter. So I think it's incumbent on all of us, not just to try and adopt and adapt and build real estate portfolios so that we can take care of ourselves and our families. That's obviously very important, and I believe in that. But also so that we could, at least in some ways, move the needle on this epidemic, not pandemic, but epidemic of homelessness and unaffordability. You know, I have 5 kids, as I mentioned, and one of my daughters is I guess an associate vice president of a large insurance company in Toronto. She makes a very good living. And her fiance is very successful too. But a 4-bedroom townhouse in downtown Toronto right now, well, I'm not sure right now because things are changing, but certainly last year was about $1.7 million. And that is a lot of money for a young couple, even a young couple that's doing quite well, you know, to find, you know, a 3 or 4 bedroom townhouse where they don't have to you know, where they don't have to, you know, spend an hour or 2 each way, you know, commuting. You know, you know, people may not realize this, but I'm a bit of an environmentalist, and one of the fastest, quickest ways that we can, in fact, cut down on CO2 emissions and perhaps be a little bit more green is to live closer to work. And if you live about 20 or 30 kilometers from work and you drive just an ordinary car, you will produce about 1.7 tons of CO2 a year. If you collapse that distance to 5 kilometers, obviously that will go down. And if you can live and work in the same place, which is something I support, obviously your CO2 emissions go from 1.6 or 1.7 tons a year down to 0. So I think we have a lot of work to do. So this is me, and this is my girlfriend, who's also my wife, Dawn MacMillan Firestone. She's also a coach, but not a real estate investment and business coach, but a life coach, and she's frankly a better coach than I am. So I ask people to think of me not as a 68-year-old, but as a 38-year-old. And people go, what? You don't look 38, Bruce. And I said, no, I don't. You know, I'm still at the point in my career where I'm, you know, creating wealth and trying to take care of myself and my family because of what happened with the NHL team in the mid-2000s. The Ottawa Senators, of which I'm the founder, went bankrupt, as most people know. And so I had to restart my career, not at 38 or 34, but at 54 years of age. So here I am, 68 years of age, 14 years later. And I've worked every day for almost the entire time of the last 14 years to kind of rebuild from that catastrophe. The joke inside the NHL is the second happiest business day of your life is the day you buy an NHL team, and the happiest, of course, is the day you sell it. Well, I think I would concur with that. So this Main Street model, Main Street makeover model, is something where you look for a smaller town within an hour or 2 of a major center. So it's no good finding a small town, you know, 500 miles or you know, 700, 800 kilometers away from a major center. That's probably too far. So you're looking for a small town within an hour or 2 of a major center. So within an hour or 2 of Los Angeles, an hour or 2 of Austin, Texas, an hour or 2 of Nashville, an hour or 2 of Boston, where you can make a difference. And what you're going to do is you're going to look for a property that you can make over. It's like, you know, the human makeover where you go and get a new suit and maybe get a facial, get a little fitter, that sort of thing. All right. So my wife and I chose Bellville. And when I say my wife and I, what I really should say is my wife chose Bellville. It's a town of about 51,000 people. It has excellent political leadership, which is very important. I've got a message here. Oh, Jason says, great choice. Jason means thank you for saying that. Just in case you have any questions for me, I will monitor in the chat box. But if everybody unmuted, we've got how many people on the call? We've got about 41 people on the call. So if everybody unmuted and there's some chatter in the background, the dog is barking, the kid is crying, we won't be able to hear anything. So thank you for using the chat box, Jason. And Jason says, great choice because he lives there. So there's some things about Belleville I like. Good political leadership, which is really important. The mayor's very progressive. Their official plan is very flexible for the kinds of things that I think I would recommend, and people know that those kinds of choices that I'm making. So good leadership, you know, it's within a couple of hours of Ottawa, a couple of hours of Toronto, and pretty much every second person I meet in Belleville seems to be coming from somewhere else, mainly from Toronto. So there you go. So we want to find a place where you are fairly close to a major center and has good leadership and has some other economic generators. And Belleville certainly passed that test. One of the economic generators, just so everybody knows, is that it's literally 5 minutes from Prince Edward County. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a second, just so I can show off my, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see my Belleville jacket here? So everybody who's involved in this project, I bought, I don't know how many of these jackets I bought. They're very nice though. And everybody gets one. And so when we finish the makeover of this building that I'm going to show you, I'm going to get a picture of everybody in front of the building, all the people who've helped me, the contractors, the subcontractors, the trades, the investors, the politicians, if they will come, the planners, you know, et cetera. And we're all going to do the Toyota jump thing, you know, get our Belleville jackets on and then jump. Now my vertical jump at 68 is about 2 inches, but some of the younger people will be better. All right, so let me keep going here. I got to share my screen again. So what are some of the trends that I'm seeing? There was a shift towards smaller towns and cities in the orbit of a bigger center. Even before COVID-19 whacked the planet. But that shift, which was coming, has now accelerated at an incredible rate. I think Liz Murphy's on the call with us today. She and her husband and Jim Hemlin run Calabogie Pics, which is a small town northwest of Ottawa. About 1,300 or 1,400 people live there. I think I got that right. And, you know, they had about 32 units in inventory, condominiums and townhouses in inventory. And the sales were coming, but they're slow, you know, but as soon as people were released from their jobs, you know, you could earn Toronto salaries and live in Whitby. You could earn San Francisco salaries. I've got a couple of tech clients in San Francisco who are paying $7,500 a month US for a 2-bedroom apartment. And now they can work for the tech company that they work for. Both of them work for Google and make $300,000 US a year and live in Boise, Idaho. So you can get a lot more for $7,500 a month in Boise than you can in the Mission District of San Francisco. And so what happened to Liz and Paul, and I'm sure she wouldn't mind me telling you this, and Jim, is that they were able to blow out their 32 unsold inventory in less than 60 days. Lots of people coming out of Ottawa, making Ottawa salaries, and moving to smaller towns, in this case, Calabogie Pics. Shopify, which is a pretty well-known organization across Canada, the United States, around the world now, you know, they are really becoming an Amazon competitor. They announced, I guess, a couple of months ago now that their downtown Ottawa headquarters, which is about 170,000 square feet, they would not be reopening it. So it means that all of those people who make really good money working for Shopify now are free to relocate to smaller towns where they can have quite a different lifestyle and still, you know, make a decent living. So that's point number one. Point number two is, this is something that I teach. This term is not mine. It belongs to Isabelle Bradbury, an architect in Quebec, and she calls the movement FIHAJ, kind of an awkward acronym, but FIHAJ stands for Every Home a Job. So lots of people are able to work from home. Not everybody, obviously, but many. And then I did a little bit of a shift on that, and I call it FIJA, for every job a home. So for every home a job, and for every job a home. The gig economy is growing at an incredible rate. This was even before the pandemic. But when you have, you know, 8.2 million people in Canada collecting the CERB benefit, the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, and I think 40 million people in the United States collecting unemployment insurance there. You know, these people are going to create their own gigs, their own little businesses, because they're going to be sick of working for other people who, when times get tough, they say, out you go. So that's another big trend that's going on. Another one is that Canada has found, as many nations around the world has found, that Canada can no longer rely on international supply chain partners. And I'm not just talking about China, but the United States as well, and others. We just cannot rely on it. So the other thing I'm picking up on is an explosion in industrial production from very small companies to large companies. We're reshoring, I guess, or onshoring industrial production. And a lot of my industrial clients are doing very well. 20% increase in industrial production in the first 7 months of this year in Canada. That's a lot. All right. Number 5, if you offered me a free office building today, I'd probably say no thanks. And so if you come to me and ask me, Bruce, I'm thinking about investing in a cheap office building, that is probably saying, I'm going to grab this anchor and jump overboard. You're probably not going to survive it. So the demand for office buildings, I think, is going to change. You know, and you've probably heard me say this before, the idea of getting up in the morning, you know, driving for an hour and a half to work, going up onto the 40th floor of a horrible office building with bad air, bad light, windows that don't open, you know, and of course, a big chance today of getting sick, and then going down after 8 or 10 hours and doing the reverse commute. That just doesn't make, it never made any sense to me, and it makes even less sense today. So I don't think office buildings have any future unless, and this is what I would tell Shopify and the property owner of their headquarters, Morguard, if you own an office building today, you should convert that, or a shopping mall. I have clients who own shopping malls as big as 750,000 square feet. 2/3 of the stores are closed and can't pay their rent. You know, if you owned, you know, 750 apartment units and 2/3 of your tenants couldn't pay their rent, that would be pretty friggin' serious. So I would convert office buildings and shopping centers, and I'm just going to read it, into live, work, play, make, create, learn, shop, exercise, entertain, grow, socialize, animated, diversified, visible, walkable, green places, spaces, and communities. In other words, places where you can work and live and play and shop and learn, right? All in one. So you just got to get rid of that office idea. So you'd have some apartments there, maybe micro suites, and you'd have some working spaces, and you'd have some maker spaces, and you'd have some places to get something to eat. So number 7 on my list is folks are rediscovering nature, and I did not understand just how powerful this was until every nursery across Canada and the United States this year was sold out. It's an old idea. In the 1950s, when my dad and CD Howe were busy, everybody who was a homeowner practically had a backyard homestead. In other words, they had some, you know, they were growing vegetables and herbs and spices and nuts and pear trees and apple trees, which grow very well in a northern climate like Canada. And people have rediscovered that. So we're going back to our roots, and they're rediscovering nature. The other thing that has really surprised me is I thought Airbnb was going to die. I just thought, oh my God, at the beginning of this pandemic, that is the end of Airbnb. And it might be, at least temporarily, if you have an Airbnb in downtown Toronto. Really, why would you ever go to downtown Toronto to go to an Airbnb? Many of the restaurants are closed. I've got another chat box message here. You know, many of the restaurants are closed. The Princess of Wales Theatre is closed. The movie theaters are closed. The nightclubs are closed. Or you may be, even if they were open, you wouldn't want to go there because you could become quite ill. But what has really astonished me is how quickly Airbnb has come back in remote locations. One of my favorite clients, young Carrie Ann McMahon, has a little cabin in the woods, literally a cabin in the woods in Wakefield, Quebec. Her occupancy since they reopened the economy in Quebec has been about 90 or 95%. She themes her Airbnb cabin in the woods as a romantic getaway. And the worse the weather gets, the busier she is. So people who have, you know, Airbnbs where you can go and you can be safe and you can have some fun, you know, you can go in the hot tub, you can go in the sauna, you can play silly board games. They've got a foosball table there. You can have a glass of wine with your partner. Isn't that a nice thing to do? And in fact, next month in December, I'm taking my girlfriend and my wife, who are the same person, to Whitby, and we're going to go to a place like that and enjoy it. So Airbnb has come back, and that's a good thing, I think. So what is the Main Street makeover? Well, I think the first one that we did was actually in a little town. This is 148 King Street in Prescott. And this building here, you can see it's on the main street. So we're looking for, it's main streets. We're looking for the main streets in these small towns, and Prescott's pretty small. And you can buy these things for not very much money. My client, who's a young man and a very good negotiator, he bought this place for $132,000, okay? And it has, you know, 2 stores here and here. And it has 3 apartments, and it had enough room at the back to add a 4th apartment. So the model, I'm just going to stop sharing again just so you can see me maybe a little bit better. I don't know if you can, but the model is very simple. Main Street makeovers are about buying something not very expensive, fixing it up, animating it. You know, animating means add some new revenue streams. You know, making the building something that is cool and people will enjoy living there. So it's not a piece of garbage. You know, the apartments are done properly, the retail space is done properly. It's rented, as I'll show you, to internet resistant and pandemic resistant users. You drive up the value, you refinance, and maybe you take some cash out and do it again. It's the only perpetual motion machine known in the universe. You know, human beings have been trying to create, you know, something for nothing for a long time, right? And perpetual motion machines were all the rage, you know, in the Middle Ages when people were trying to find ways to get something for nothing. That's a bit, by the way, guys, not for the women on the call, but for the men on the call, that's a typical male thing. You know, I have about 2,500 people I put through my coaching practice, about 60% of them male, about 40% female. I never get asked by any of the women, how do I, you know, make money without any work? But the guys are looking for shortcuts. And the only shortcut that I've ever found is a shortcut to failure. So with all due respect, that is not a realistic goal. All right, so let's keep going. So this one was done, and then we've been doing projects in Sarnia, Belleville. Belleville's the one I'm doing, Moncton, Calabogie Pics, Carleton Place, Rockland, Renfrew, and Penticton, and I've got a bunch going on in the United States as well. So this is the building that my wife and I bought, and this handsome young man here that you see on the screen with his hard hat is me doing the building inspection, all right? My wife, Dawn, found this property, I guess it was on MLS, the multiple listing service, realtor.ca. She found it, I think, on a Friday. This was a photograph, I think, taken either the next day on Saturday, or maybe it was Sunday. So it was either the next day or the day after that. We did the building inspection. I am a civil engineer. I feel comfortable doing a building inspection. So I went through this building. I liked it. We put in an offer, I think, with the help of Nick Cripps and Simon Case, 2 young realtors who work with me. I think we put it in on the Sunday, and we bought the building, I think, on the Monday. There was an investor group coming from Toronto on the Monday to see this particular property, and another group from Hamilton also coming on the Monday. It was an unconditional offer, you know, and we put in that it was open for acceptance, I think, until noon on Monday. It also was a power of sale, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. So what you're seeing here is this is the main street of Belleville, which is being rehabilitated and gentrified, although that's kind of a word that you shouldn't really use in public anymore. It has a bad odor to it, but it is certainly being, you know, resuscitated is maybe a better word. And you can see it has some retail space on the ground floor. There are some really decrepit office space on the 2nd floor. And what we found on the 3rd floor was 6 existing micro suites, which I'll talk more about in a minute. So this is what the building looked like in the 1970s. And if you're sitting down, that's a good thing, because this building was built in 1872. I'll repeat that, not 1972, 1872. All right, so in 2022, so not that long from now, it will celebrate its 150th birthday. And one of the things I do is I buy buildings that no one else seems to want. And you know, after the Senators went broke, I went and bought a house, a townhouse, for $241,250 that had been on the market for 400 days. Think about that, 400 days. When all the other townhouses in that area were selling them for around $400,000. So we bought it about $160,000 below market because it was owned by a hoarder. And the smell was incredible. The piles of stuff was just, so most people would, they'd open the door and they'd just run away. But I went through it and I realized that once it had been cleaned up, it would be quite a beautiful building. And we still own that. If you had gone through this with me, I think most of you your first reaction might have been the same. Run away, go, oh my God, who would ever want to buy something like this? But here's what we did. We put in an offer for $280,500, which was accepted. And then and it had a short closing. So we put it in, I think, on the 1st of September or something like that. And we closed on the 30th of September, something like that. So we had about a month to close the deal. No conditions, right? So it's $280,500. You can see there's a little bit of land transfer tax, some legal fees and disbursements. I don't know why it was that high, but anyway, we had some financing fees that we had to pay and some miscellaneous costs. So we spent about $294,000. It's about a 12,000 square foot building, built up area, which works out to about $24 a square foot. Now, if you've ever built a doghouse, I've done a few of them, it's about 40 bucks to a square foot to build a doghouse, about $85 to build an uninsulated garage, and around $95 a square foot to build one of these mini storage buildings, of which I've built quite a few. And I think Ruben Ugarte is on the call with me, and he would know even more accurately. But you can't build anything not really, for $24.54 a square foot. So it's a pretty good deal. So we, as buyers, we are not, even though I'm a realtor, we are not responsible for taking care of the seller or the lender. And as a realtor, I don't like being in multiple representation. The reason for that is I think it's an obvious conflict of interest. And I think there's about 9 or 10 states in the US that do not allow realtors to be in multiple representation. God forbid any of you guys are ever accused of a crime, but would you want the Crown Attorney, or in the United States, the prosecuting attorney, to also be your lawyer? I think not. You would end up in jail for a very long time. So, so I don't really think realtors should be in multiple representation, but in this case, myself, Nick Cripps, Simon Case, the young realtors who work with me, we can put forward an offer where we do not represent the seller. The seller is a lender in this case, and the lender has their own law firm, their own realtor. We don't have to tell them boo. We can't lie to them, but we don't have to tell them anything about what our plans are. So they sold it to us for $280,500, and they had to eat about $55,000 or $60,000 in back property taxes. They had to pay their realtor. They had to pay their legal fees. They had to pay whatever interest was owing. So they did terribly on this deal. That is the power of sale. That is what power of sale is. But if you guys are ever on the other side of the transaction, and I know Janice, for example, is often on the other side of a transaction where she's a lender, you always want to put in your loan agreements. If you ever lend any money, whether it's an RRSP loan or whatever it is, you want to put in not only the right to power of sale of property, but the right to foreclose. And the reason for that, I'll just explain that. It's not really that relevant today, but I wanted to say it to you anyway, because it's my chance to maybe teach you guys something if you don't know this, is that what, in my opinion, what these guys should have done is they should have had foreclosure in their loan agreements. They should have foreclosed on this building. They should have cleaned it up themselves and then sold it, once it's cleaned up, sold it for $500,000 or $600,000 instead of $280,500, less the property taxes, utilities, and all the other problems that they had to eat. So foreclosure is a good thing if you're a lender, because you never want to sell a property under power of sale. You never want to let one of your properties go power of sale, because it's then immediately stigmatized. And then people like me and the other people on this call, they will come and take advantage of you, which in a way we kind of did. I think I'm going to skip through this. This is not really as relevant as I was hoping. I did want to say to Steve Shepard, he's my lawyer. He's one of the sponsors for the ROI group. I did want to say to Steve, you know, happy Remembrance Day, and thank you for all the help and support you've given me. I've worked with Steve since he was, I think, 28 or 29. He's now in his early 40s. And he runs his own firm. He is a fantastic real estate lawyer and has made a huge difference in my life and in my family's life. I also want to thank Matt Slobodian. If you're ever doing a project and you need CMHC funding, and you got to remember, some CMHC programs are going to give 50-year money at, I think, like 1.1 or 1.2% if it includes an affordable housing component. This is the guy who's, I think, got the most expertise in CMHC funding in Canada. He is also a sponsor of the ROI group. So you can see his email address here, mslobodian@canadaicicapital.ca. He's on that email all the time. And, you know, 50-year funding at 1 or 1.1 or 1.2%, whatever it is like free money for us entrepreneurs. So thank you, Matt. All right, so what is the highest and best use for the Belleville building? Well, the answer is not to put a shoe store in there, in my opinion. If you put a shoe store in there, you're competing with this Amazon company called Zappos.com. They probably have 6 or 7 million different kinds of shoes you can buy on that website. And because it's part of the Amazon empire, they can deliver it to you in many cities in an hour or two, if not maybe a day or two. So you know, these kinds of uses at grade will probably not work. People often say to me, politicians will say to me, business improvement associations will say to me, well, why don't we put a hardware store at grade in your building, Bruce, on Front Street? Well, Home Depot is 9 minutes away from this particular location. If I put a hardware store, a small general store or hardware store in the bottom of this building at grade, I'd be surprised if it lasted much longer than a year. So that's not really practical. So these are the tests that I use for a building like this. Whatever uses you put at grade, they must be internet resistant. They must be pandemic resistant. You know, must be resistant, obviously, to the crisis we're in now. And they must be big box resistant. Because if they're not, the big box stores, the internet providers, and certainly the pandemic will finish them off. So those are the 3 tests that I think you should apply as well if you have any space like that. So what are some of the uses that might work at grade in Belleville? And whether it's Belleville or, you know, it's Boise, Idaho, I think these uses probably could be sustained. You might have, you know, a hair salon and spa. You might have a nail bar. People still go to, I have many clients in the business and they're still busy. You might have a photographer. I have one of my young clients, she does boudoir photography. I didn't even know what that was, but young women who are getting married will come and spend a weekend with her. She has an Airbnb and they will, you know, make very nice pictures for their future husbands. So she's very successful, I might add. I have another client who does dog and cat grooming. People like to get their animals groomed. And until the internet can, you know, groom your dog, I think she's going to be in business. A registered massage therapy. Almost every tech guy I know, man and woman I know, has RSI from too much keyboarding, repeated stress injury. So they're still in business today. Physiotherapy. I mean, as the population gets older, we need more physio. Chiropractor. People love yoga. People still want to learn and do yoga. I do yoga once or twice a week with my wife. This is a big deal. You'd be amazed at how many Etsy crafters I coach, and there's some business models. I won't go into it today because, you know, I've told you, almost everybody, you know, some people fall asleep by thinking about sheep. I fall asleep thinking about business model. That is a true story. But some of these Etsy crafters are teaching craft and doing all kinds of things. And that has legs, I think, as well. These are pictures actually I took of at Picton. Picton is not far from Belleville. That is wine country. You know, Prince Edward County is wine country. It's a big Airbnb destination. And for anybody thinking about investing in Belleville, and there's some other properties that are available there that are really good. in my opinion. You know, being close to Prince Edward County is a great thing for a couple of reasons. One, the adventure Airbnb thing is still going to work even in the pandemic, and I'm sure we're going to get on top of the pandemic, even if it takes another year or so. But the other good news story from Belleville's point of view, and I wanted you to hear this, Dale. The other good news is that I think Prince Edward County is going to ban any new Airbnbs, but Belleville, I've talked to the mayor, Belleville is not. And so if you're 5 minutes from Prince Edward County and all the Airbnbs in Picton and that area are booked, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Belleville. One of the developers I met in Belleville, who's been renovating Main Street, Belleville, Front Street, for about 11 years, his name is Zubin Gillespie. Zubin is now retrofitting one of his classic buildings for two two-bedroom Airbnbs overlooking the Moira River, which runs through Belleville. He told me, I just fell off my chair, he's going to get $400 a night next when he's finished his renovation. He is a beautiful renovator. And I said, $400 a night? Yep, during the season, which is longer than you might think, because people will drink wine even in winter. You know, $400 a night times maybe 20 nights is $8,000 a month. And he's got two of them, that's $16,000 a month from two two-bedroom apartments overlooking the Belleville and the Moira River in Belleville. That's a pretty good cap rate, so that's pretty cool. So these are pictures I took at the Picton Air Base. Two of my former students are architects in the area. I just happened to run into them, and they told me to go have a look at the air base. So I did, and there are all these incredibly old buildings that you could see on here. There's like dozens and dozens of them filled with makers. Now you can see one of them here, it's called Maggie's Gone to Pot. It's not about what you think. It's not about weed. It's not about cannabis. It's about pottery. But there were like 40 or 50 of these buildings full of makers and you know, workshops. And makerspace is just the young person's term for workshop. And this is a big, big, big thing. This is part of the gigpreneur thing I was talking about earlier. So what else might work? Well, maybe a woodworking shop that does some teaching. This is another one that's really interesting. In Europe, it's very common to see Airbnb at grade, but certainly, you know, that would work. We could, if we wanted to, develop one of those retail spaces at grade as an Airbnb at grade. Why not? They do it. The pictures that you see here is a beautiful Airbnb in Venice. I haven't been there, unfortunately, but friends of mine have. The other thing that could work at grade, and by the way, the new official plan in Belleville allows people to both live and work at grade. A lot of official plans and zoning bylaws and zoning ordinances in the United States do not allow you to have any living space at grade. That can be on the second or third floor perhaps, but not at grade. But in Belleville, in the new official plan, I think they will permit it. So you could have elder care. You could have a young person like you see on the screen here with her personal support worker certificate taking care of an elder at grade. And the design you see on the screen here is really fantastic. This comes from Paul Randhawa's architect in British Columbia in White Rock, BC. And you can see how it works here. The green apartment is a nice one-bedroom apartment, but it has a self-contained lock-off suite. So this young person could perhaps live in the lock-off suite and provide you know, services to her elder. And I think that is a wonderful model, much better than a retirement residence, which really is a ghetto of people aged at 85 to 105 waiting to die. And the pandemic has shown how deadly those places can be. I think if you mix in the generations, you will have a much better result in many ways. And this is one of the designs that I think would do it. And we might be able to do that at grade. The other thing that in the last ROI group meeting, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I did send out the recorded session. Tim Reed, who's just a brilliant young investor based in Calgary, has a concept called Little Steps Academy. He buys homes, turns them into day homes where they can, you know, daycare, and have 5 or 6 little kids and an early childhood educator. So it's just a great model. I'm not going to go through the details because it would take another hour to do that, and I don't want to run out of time. But that would work here as well, I think. And then something else happened. My wife says the harder you work, the luckier you get. And we got a contact, I guess, last week from by Loyalist College, which is in the area, very strong in tech, very strong in agriculture. And they're thinking of maybe converting, of having a downtown campus. So who knows, the whole building could be filled with students in the micro suites, maybe students in the second floor, and classrooms on the ground floor. I don't know. But anyway, the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I'm going to have a discussion with Jeremy, who's a senior vice president at Loyalist College next week. And so I'll tell you more. So I had been, really stressing to towns and cities and to everybody I coach about something I call toggle space, toggle switch, toggle space. And I'm not sure I'm winning the argument, but it looks like I've won the argument in not that it's an argument, I've won the point, I guess, in Belleville. I won't know if I've won the argument in Ottawa, where I live, until November 20th, because the official plan of the City of Ottawa comes out on the 20th. And I've been working with the City of Ottawa on that. I was a hired consultant. So I made some recommendations, but I don't know exactly if it's in there or not. So, I'll be just like everybody else, waiting to see when the city releases it in 9 days. But what I would like, and I've also argued this with the City of Kingston in Ontario, what I'd like is, cities across North America, in fact, around the world, to allow people to live and work at grade. So rather than saying it has to be all commercial, because many of these commercial spaces have been empty in these main streets for a long time, some people might want to live there. So you might have a lawyer who says, look, I'd like to live at grade, and maybe I'll have a street legal practice in front, so I can live in back and work there. Or I could have my hair salon there and live behind. So I could have a micro suite here and, a shop in front, but a shop that is pandemic resistant, big box resistant, and internet resistant. And maybe over time, that could be all residential, just could be an artist who wants to live there, or it could be all commercial, or it could be some mix. So it toggles back and forth. And don't let, the dead hand of the planners dictate what it's going to be, because that just results in many, many, many main streets across North America having vacant stores. And vacant stores are as if you saw a handsome man or a beautiful woman, and she smiles or he smiles, and they're missing half their teeth. It definitely detracts from physical beauty, male or female. And that's what we're doing to our cities and towns and our old main streets, right? So my recommendation is stop doing that. So this is a typical micro suite, and I'm in love with these. This is the hottest trend in real estate everywhere. If you have a house and you could put a micro suite in your house, do it. The cap rates on these things can be as high as 23%. That's a really good cap rate. It's not 6%. It can be as high as 23%. And they're very, very simple. They have a sleeping area. They have their own bathroom. They have a micro kitchen. It's not small, but you can survive. My wife and I, when we were a young couple, we had a toaster oven, and Dawn was able to make Thanksgiving dinners for us and from a toaster oven. I mean, she was amazing. And then as we got a little bit more successful, we could have a bigger kitchen, but a micro kitchen here, an entertainment area here, and a study area here, and some kind of access to the outside. These are just logos that Isabel Bradbury from Quebec has loaned me and given me permission to use. She created that, as I mentioned earlier, FIHAJ, for every home a job. All right? And that's what toggle space really means. So what is the highest and best use? I just lost my poppy. Excuse me. What is the highest and best use for this place? Well, probably at grade, you're going to have, 3 of these retail stores. I put retail in quotation marks because it's not going to be a shoe store, but one of the uses that I talked about, maybe with some micro suites in behind so they can live and work there. And I don't know if you can see it clearly on the screen here, but there's this long sort of protrusion at the back, which is really kind of weird. Built probably, almost 150 years ago. We're going to turn those into maker spaces, right? Because that's what people want. You know, they want to live there and they want to make something. People want to make stuff. The second floor is a complete tear down, right? It's just a complete mess. We're going to take this ugly facade off. You know, this is a building that is a treasure, but it has not been well treated by its owners. It has been neglected horribly. And, you know, for those of you who are interested in real estate, I'm going to talk about Lamborghinis. If you owned a Lamborghini, and I have a few, I don't know anything like that, but if you owned a Lamborghini, you'd be out there every couple of days polishing it. You would only take it out on the road. I've got a friend of mine, he only takes it out 1 day a year. He insures it only for 1 day a year because it's so expensive. And he makes sure that there's been a rain before he takes it out. So the streets are clean, there's no oil on it. It can't have a cloud in the sky, it has to be summer. And he'll drive it around and show off his Lamborghini. But, you know, what amazes me, that's an $800,000 Lamborghini. But what amazes me is that people spend more time with their dogs and spend more time on their Lamborghinis than they will on their real estate portfolio. And when a tenant calls them and says, look, you know, something wrong with my plumbing, you know, the landlord is saying, oh God, why do they have to call me? You know, what the hell? You know, I got to polish my Lamborghini. And the fact is, you know, Lamborghinis don't make any money, and breaking news, nor do dogs, unless they're sheepdogs in Australia. So I would want you guys, if you're buying anything, take care of your property. And if you're not prepared to do that, don't buy it and don't go into this business. No deferred maintenance. A $10,000 roof leak can turn into a $250,000 mold problem over the summer if you don't do something about it. You get water in your building, you know, and you don't do anything about it, mold will just eat your building, and you'll be really sorry you didn't fix the roof when you could have. So take care of it. And this building has been horribly abused. And I criticize the previous owners, and there were probably quite a few of them over the last 150 years. So anyway, so this horrible brick veneer will be ripped off, and this crap will be done, and we'll do a facade improvement. We'll have some maker spaces, some quasi-retail space here, some micro suites. I think 3 apartments on this level, and then the 6 micro suites up here. The other thing that I am a huge believer in, and Dave Bush, you've heard me say it until you're probably tired of hearing me say it, I really think that people who play together stay together. So if you have tenants that are playing together, couples that play together, they stay together. You know, I mean, life is tough. I don't know anybody who gets through life unscathed. You know, so our plan is to put a patio out front of this building, and we're going to incorporate some very simple games, maybe ping pong, you know, maybe a bocce court, if you know bocce. We don't have room for a pickleball court, but if we did, we'd probably do something like that. And so this is just me doing some scratching on it. So this is the building again, and we have permission from the city of Belleville to take the entire front and turn it into a patio, which we will, and we'll incorporate some simple games to it. And I'm going to talk to my neighbor who just has a parking lot, basically, and I'm going to see if I can steal some of this area. You know, maybe he might lease it to us for hopefully not too much money, and then we could put in a pickleball court. So imagine how much fun it would be to be able to do something like that. So you could get, if we can find a cafe here, a good quality cafe, you know, to have a cup of coffee, to have a sandwich, to have a glass of wine, and play some silly games too. One of the trends that obviously the pandemic has really accelerated is having patios run year round. And you might say, oh, that's impossible in Canada. I mean, you know, Ottawa's really cold. Edmonton is even colder. But Edmonton and Winnipeg have announced that they're going to run their patios year round. And we've been asking the mayor of Ottawa to do that. And he initially said, no, I don't think so. But, you know, once Edmonton and Winnipeg said they're going to do it, Ottawa has announced that they're going to do it too. So that's a good thing. The mayor of Belleville has not yet agreed to allow us to open our patio year round, but we're going to, you know, see if we can persuade him differently. And this is not new. I've been to Copenhagen, and Copenhagen winters are really cold. You know, the sun in the winter comes up at, I think, 10 in the morning, goes down around 2:30, and they don't get the same amount of snow that we get here, but they get a lot of wind off the Baltic, and it's pretty friggin' cold. And they've been running their patios year round for at least a decade. I got a little comment here. Who's this? This is from Bush. I would say your comment on taking care of the building is fair, but that takes money. Downtown Belleville has suffered a loss of key stores and foot traffic for the last 50 years since the Quinte Mall opened. How are you going to get people to come back downtown when they have been trying for 25 years? Great question, Rob. The answer to that, in my opinion, is the same answer I gave. I'll stop sharing the screen just so I can talk to all of you guys. Same answer I gave the National Capital Commission. We have in Ottawa something called the Spark Street Mall, which has been incredibly unsuccessful. Exactly the point that you made. Stores have left. There are lots of civil servants working downtown, or they were before the pandemic whacked the city. But before 2020, yes, you had people working downtown, but as soon as 5 o'clock came, you know, it's like the Flintstones. I don't know if anybody knows the Flintstones, but Flintstones, you know, the whatever it's called, the hooter would go off and everybody go home. You know, Fred would flip out and go home and see Wilma. Leave the court, right? And so that's Ottawa, and that was Spark Street. And so in the 1980s, the NCC came to me and said, "Oh, this is our retail is failing here. You know, what are we going to do?" So they paid me to do a report. They paid me to do this report, and National Capital Commission is famous for paying consultants like me and coaches like me to do reports, and then they take the report, and you guys know what they do with it, right? They read it avidly and implement it right away, correct? Not a chance. They read the report. No, they don't even read it. They go, "Thank you very much, here's your big check," and then they throw it in file 13. File 13 is the garbage. So my report back in the 80s said, look, Spark Street can never, ever, ever be successful, ever, unless you bring people to live there. The same thing is true in Belleville. Same thing is true everywhere. Why does Manhattan work? Or it did. 40% of the rich dudes in Manhattan have gone, have left, right? They're all living in Florida now because of the pandemic. If you're living on the 63rd floor of a tower overlooking Central Park and you want to go get a liter of milk, that you could die doing that. So you know, these rich people, they have alternatives. They've left. 40% of the rich people. But what made Manhattan successful before the pandemic, and I assume afterwards, was the fact that you have 450 or 500,000 people living there. If it was just Wall Street and just office buildings and everybody left at 5 o'clock, you know, New York would look like Spark Street and would look like downtown Belleville. So the key for all of these places is very, very simple. You got to bring people to live there. And just give me a minute and I'll show you. I got another question, I think, as well from Alex. Let me see if I can find it here. Give me a second. I think Alex was asking me, since you live far from Belleville, how are you going to oversee the renos and operations? So the answer to that is I have no intention of overseeing the operations. I have a wife who's doing that. What I do is I jump on Zoom, Alex, and I meet with the project coordinator who's really good at what he does. His name's Mark Turner. He lives in Belleville. He's on the job every minute of every day. In fact, more than hours than you could probably imagine. And Dawn visits every 2 weeks. So she spends 2 days every 2 weeks on site managing the project. She's the project manager. And Mark Turner's the project coordinator. And then I meet with them for about an hour and a half via Zoom. If I had to actually be the project manager, I wouldn't have bought it because as I said earlier on the call, when you weren't on the call, Alex, I want to spend my time doing research and coaching and mentoring and teaching and a bit of consulting, but not doing any administration. So that's how we're handling it. All right, so here's one patio that you can see on the screen here. And this was the, I don't know if you can see it, but here's the original metal fencing, I guess, around the original patio. And this year they got permission from the city to expand it because obviously restaurants had to move most of their, maybe all of their dining outside. And so one of the things that I've recommended to these folks and many others is to run their patios year round, and they will now be permitted to do that in Ottawa and in other cities like Edmonton and Winnipeg. And we hope to make that a permanent feature. How do you do that? Well, one of the things I've recommended, and this is just very bad animation by me, is that they buy a bunch of dwarf evergreens and surround the patio with dwarf evergreens. The only real way to protect anything from the brutal winds that blow through Canada most of the winter is with a treescape. So they can do that, and they will have permission to have propane heaters out there as well. So every chair will have a blanket. You'll be able to go in and put a blanket over yourself, sheepskin, except it won't be made out of sheep. And gas heaters, and it'll be toasty warm in there. I'm quite confident that we'll be able to run these patios year round if we do it properly. Here are some of the plans. I'm not going to go through the details of them, but this is the second floor plan. It's got, let's see what it has. It has a 2-bedroom unit, which is about 885 square feet. It has a 1-bedroom unit, which is 586 square feet, and another 1-bedroom unit, which is 644 square feet. Very nice plans. I'm really impressed with what the architect did. And here are the 6 micro suites. They're already existing on the 3rd floor. Obviously, they need significant improvement, but we're going to keep them and use them. And they're different sizes. These are the 4, 5, 6, and 7 are pretty small, but I think they're about, if I recall, about 400 square feet. So the micro suite that I showed you on the earlier slide was about 330 square feet. So 400 square feet for a micro suite is not a bad size. Just to put that in perspective, UBC finished a project last year, University of British Columbia, where they built their micro suites as small as 145 square feet. They've got a bed that turns into a desk that turns into a bed, but they do have a bathroom in there. They do have a little bit of a cooking facility in there, but 145 square feet is too small, in my opinion, for a commercial project. But UBC has, students want independence. They do. They don't want roommates. And in a pandemic, you definitely don't want a roommate. So there you go. And then, of course, these are a little bit bigger, 8 and 9. They might be, I guess, 1-bedroom units. I think that's probably likely what we're going to have. So not quite micro suites, really. Then this is the ground floor plan. And again, I'm not going to go through the detail, but remember, this was the weird projection in the back. We have enough room for, I think, 13 vehicles to park back here. And we have that weird projection, which is going to be maker spaces or workshops. And I've been dicking around with maker spaces and workshops. Alex Culligan has been doing that. Many other of my clients in Long Beach have been doing it too. Workshops and maker spaces, even in the back yard of a residential home, is really, really popular. And people pay for those things. So I really like that model. This is just the basement plan. I'm just going to see, I think I got another, I can't find it right now. This is the basement plan. It's only, I think, 6 feet or 5'10" down there. We are dehumidifying it, getting rid of the mold down there. Obviously, we'll be improving it, but it will simply be, I think, a vacant space. This is an old building. Now, now we get into some of the numbers. So you remember we bought it for $280, $250. The renovation budget is about $900,000, a little over 900 grand. And then we've got some professional fees that we have to pay. We have to pay an architect. We have some financing costs. People often forget, money costs money, right? We have a big contingency allowance for a project this size of $115,000 because when you've got a building that's almost 150 years old, right? Bad stuff can happen. Hopefully not, but we expect to spend that. We're not trying to save any money there. That will go. So the whole project we think will come in around $1.5 million. And then I've gone through the HABU, H-A-B-U, highest and best use for you before, so I don't really have to go through that again. And then here's the revenue side. So we're looking at some net revenues from commercial uses, some gross revenues. So this is a mix of gross and net. And when you boil it all down, I was hoping to break $200,000 a year with this building. I don't think initially we're going to be able to do that. It's going to come close, but it won't be 200. I was hoping around 220, but we're not going to get there initially. We'll be about 196. Net NOI stands for net operating income. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is, from the point of view of that perpetual motion machine that I talked to you guys about earlier. This is the slide that, what do they call this? This is the key slide. This is the money shot, I guess they call it in Hollywood. So if you have $196,000 of net operating income, according to CBRE, CBRE is a big real estate company, the applicable cap rate in a small town like Belleville is around 5.5%. If this was a building in Toronto, it might be as low as 3.5% or 4.5%, which makes a big difference. In LA, it could be 2%, but in Belleville, you're not going to get that. So what is this property worth, okay? And most of you, maybe all of you guys know that I'm sure all of you guys know that most realtors, when they're asked to tell you how much a building is worth, will look for comparables. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, of course. If you could find another 150-year-old building on Front Street with this kind of highest and best use that had just sold, that's your comparable. But it's not like a bungalow in Whitby or a bungalow in Etobicoke or a bungalow in a suburb of Nashville where 10 other bungalows have sold in the last few months that are very comparable. So comparables is maybe not the best way to value property like this. In my opinion, the best way is based on income. And so if you have $196,000 of net operating income on a total cost of $1.5 million, it means that this building will produce about a 13% cap rate, which is good. It's more than twice what I set as the minimum, but it's not a runaway success. I do have some projects that some of my coaching clients have done, like putting a micro suite in your principal residence that gives that will give you 23% cap rate. There are things that will produce those kinds of numbers, and there's some other models out there. This one, it will not be 23 or 24%. I wish I could tell you it was, but I'd be lying to you. But it will produce probably around 13%. And if I could get that to 220, obviously this number would be higher, but I don't think so. So 13%. So, but if you take the 5.5% market cap rate, so what you would be able to sell this to an investor for, and you apply that to the 196, you divide 196,000 by 5.5%, you get around $3.5 million. So the hope is that my wife and I have bought this property with our group for $280,000 to $500, and that at the end of next year, it will be worth $3.5 million. Once we have rent stabilized it, we have good clients in there, we proved our income, we think we'll get that. And I just got a chat question, and I'm not sure who it was from, so I apologize for having to double duty. Was it for you, David?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the lenders would apply that same cap.
Right. So the answer to that question I will have for you at the end of next week. And the reason is I have Michael Kottman, who is an accredited appraiser, looking at these numbers right now. And I'm going to get from him an as-if complete number. And I'm hoping he will support the $3.5 million number. But I don't know that yet. But probably by the end of next week or early the following week, I will know that. So that's very important. David's question is very important, because if the lenders don't agree, well, there you go. But let's just think about it in the simplest possible terms, okay? Let's say we did get a $3.5 million value for this by the end of next year, and we put a 65% loan to value mortgage. So not 80%, not 90%, not 70, 65%. It means we would get about $2.275 million on a new mortgage at the end of next year. We have a total cost of about $1.5 million. So we would be able to take out about $700,000 or $800,000 of tax-free cash. That is the magic of real estate. I've been doing this for a long time, ever since the Sens went broke, right? Otherwise, I would be, I'd be like those poor people that I showed earlier in the slides. I'd be out on the street. I wouldn't know what to do with myself. And so I've been doing this for a long time, and clients of mine have been doing this for a long time. And it does work. So we'd be able to pull out $700,000 or $800,000 of cash and then do something with it, maybe buy another one. But let's assume that Dave is right, and the lender say, oh, to hell with that. And it's only worth $2.5 million. Okay, so let's go with $2.5 million, and we'll go with 65% loan to value. It means we could get a mortgage at the end of next year of $1.625 million. That, I think, is like asking me to high jump 6 inches. I can manage that. And even at 1.625 million, Dave, we won't get hundreds of thousands, but we get about $100,000 or $125,000 of cash out of the building. Now, Janice has just asked, is this a hold or a flip? It is absolutely a hold. The reason for that is I do not teach people to flip, whether it's flip houses or flip buildings. I think that is a terrible idea. It is so difficult to do this kind of work, and there are so many risks that when you have a successful project, keep the damn thing. Pay off your mortgage over time, right? And then, you have lots of choices. So have you heard this one, Dave? What you should do, what you should be planning to do is you should plan to die broke. And what they mean by that, most people don't really understand what that means. What that means is, let's say Dave Bush owns this building. It's worth $3.5 million. He's paid off the mortgage. Now, Dave, instead of being, 25 years of age, right, Dave? Instead of being 25, Dave is now 80, no, not 85. Dave is now 70 years of age. And he's got some beautiful kids, and he's decided he's going to leave this to his kids. But he doesn't necessarily have to leave it to them without any debt on it. So maybe Dave decides, I am going to have some fun. I'm 70 and I'm still in good shape. I'm going to go to Costa Rica and sip rum and whatever, have some fun. So I'm going to put a $1 million mortgage on this thing. There's still $2.5 million of equity in the building for your kids. So they're still going to get a really nice whack of change when you go and see St. Peter, David. But you've got $1 million of tax-free money, and you can go to Costa Rica, and guess what? You never pay income taxes again. That's just money you got for refinancing. And the nice thing is that your tenants over the next few years will pay that $1 million off. So now maybe you're 75 or 80, and that $1 million is gone. You do another $1 million. Again, you never pay any income tax, ever. I've got clients who are your age, David, who are already in that position. They're just really smart people, way smarter than their coach. And they will never pay any income tax again. It's an incredible model. But so I think that overall, I think the risks are manageable, but it's not risk-free, and it's certainly not work-free. Anyway,
I just want to make one comment, though. I think the flipping thing, I think the reason why people find that attractive is because there is, in real estate investing, you have to have a stomach to hold debt, right? And I think that's where.
Yeah, well, as long as your cash flow coverage is good, I didn't do the numbers, but, on a $2 million loan, if you could get CMHC funding, because remember, some of these units will be considered affordable. If you could get a 50-year mortgage out of Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation at 1.2%, don't worry about it. A $2 million mortgage at 1.2%, the interest would be like $24,000 a year, and your net operating income is almost $200,000. So, I mean, yes, you do need to have the courage of your convictions, and that's why you have to hire a good coach, Dave. All right? Because if there's one thing that I do as a coach is I do affirm to my clients when I think they're on the right track, and also when they're on the wrong track. And sometimes the second is more important than the first. Anyway, I put some pictures in here. You can see what this place looked like when I went in, right? And this is after it's been cleaned up a bit. right? And so we're, I mean, they just left this building in a catastrophic condition. It was just awful. But anyway, as we're, you know, renovating and demolishing the junky stuff that they've done to the building, we're uncovering just beautiful spaces. Double brick. You'll see in the next slide, I don't know if it shows very well, we're uncovering, you know, the tin roof and all these beautiful architectural features that we're certainly going to keep. It's just like a discovery process. And now this you can't really see, this slide here at the top left, but we discovered in the building, there are 100-foot long original growth timber beams in there that are fantastic. We're going to sandblast those and expose them. They're just, can you imagine 100? I mean, that's what the British originally came to North America for, right? For all our tall white pines, they could chop them down and use them as masts for their vast navy. But look, when you can imagine what this building will look like when it's cleaned up and fixed up. One of the things that the Loyalist College told me when they went through the building was that this project reminded them of the tannery in Kitchener-Waterloo, and that was, I think, a little bit of flattery. The tannery in Waterloo is really something. I mean, I put this here so you could see what they've done with this building. It's absolutely fantastic. But there's no question that people will pay a premium, Dave, just so you know, for spaces that are authentic. And that give them something that they can't get in perhaps a modern structure. And this one is, so I do think they were being nice to us, but you know, certainly that is our ambition to do as much as we can, as best we can, to live up to this kind of standard. So I think that's probably enough. I probably bored you guys for an hour and 22 minutes, and I really appreciate everybody sticking with me. You know, I just can't tell you how much opportunity there is today. It is my belief that COVID has been both a curse and a blessing. It has been a curse because so many wonderful people have passed away, and there's no doubt about that. It has been a curse. But I do think it is going to result in very, very significant changes in our economy, many of which are good for the economy and good for the planet. If this FIHASH thing, a FIJA thing, where people can live and work in the same place, if it becomes an accepted norm, and we can reduce our carbon footprint and our environmental footprint, if we can do more with make local, grow local, you know, walk to our neighbors, build our communities. You know, this has to be a good thing, I think, for human beings, but it also has to be a good thing for the planet. I don't want to get too off track here, but it has been my contention for at least a couple of decades that if we're truly serious about protecting this incredible planet that we live on, then we have to do something that only exists now in the no-go zone around Chernobyl and in the demilitarized zone between the two Koreas. It may surprise you guys to know that biological diversity and wildlife and flora and fauna and Mother Nature is flourishing by far the most in the no-go zone around Chernobyl and in that no-go area between the two Koreas, the demilitarized zone. That is incredible. And the reason for that is that human beings don't go there. And if we want to save this goddamn planet, excuse my language, but if we want to save this planet, and we're serious about it, we're not just talking about it, because there's a lot of greenwashing going on. But if we're serious about it, we should ban human beings from entering 2/3 of the ocean and probably 3/4 of the land area of this planet. That we would just simply say, you can't sail your ship through there. If you've got your binoculars and you want to go see the birds, you can't go there. You want to save this planet? Bring people together in cities that are designed around the kind of concepts that I'm talking about, so they're healthier places for us so we don't all go crazy. and leave almost 3/4 of the planet alone, where we don't send a ship through there. You can't row your boat through it, because it is absolutely clear that the places where Mother Nature is flourishing are the only places are where human beings don't go. Not a tourist, with all the good intentions, and all of the care that you might want to bring to it, you just don't go there. And that is really what I'm saying to you guys. I think this pandemic has been a curse, but I do think it is time for us to, kind of rethink how we make cities, how we build our economies, how we relate to each other in our communities, and also how we relate to nature. We are part of nature. The idea that human beings stand apart is pure myth. And I know that Elon Musk says, we should all go to Mars. Well, I don't really like the winter all that much. I'm okay with it, but I don't really like it. You think it's cold in Ottawa or Edmonton? Try Mars, where it's minus 140. No thanks. So that's it for today. You guys all know how to get a hold of me. You've got my email address. You can reach out to me. American Thanksgiving is coming up, right, Liz? And Christmas is coming up, and the holidays. So we're not going to do another ROI session until January. Gives me a little bit of a break in December. So thank you very much, everybody, for sticking with me. And I will, this has been recorded. I'll put it on YouTube. Everybody will get a recording of it, including everybody who couldn't make it live.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. The best.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks so much. See you guys.